Hey everybody, this is Pooka bringing you another game from the Cut Invitational. Now we posted the ones that we've streamed, but like we promised, every match from this tournament was recorded and will be posted online. A little late, I apologize for that, but we're going to get this one into motion right here. So in this match we have Esa Juntunen from the deck out on the left. It's a player from Finland, he's been their national champion tons of times. And it looks like he is playing the Mew Accelgor Chandelure deck. I read his report and he said he didn't have access to the promo Litwicks, so that's unfortunate. But I think he'll manage just fine as he starts with that collector. Now on the right we have 2010 World Champion, Yuta Komatsuda. And he is playing a Darkrai Mewtwo deck. He used this deck to finish in the top 8 of Worlds this year as well. So clearly one of the best players in the world. Very consistent player, always seems to do very well. And we'll see how this interesting matchup plays out because by far one of the decks that the Japanese players feared was the Accelgor deck. Because they knew if it ever set up, they would probably just lose. And you know, once they get the deck and cover lock with paralyzation every single turn and the Curse Shadow, you could end up just never getting to attack again. So if you're Esa, you're going to be going for this lock. You need the Chandelure, you need the Vileplume, you need the Mew in the Lost Zone, you need the double colorless energy every turn. You need the Accelgor in the Lost Zone, not the Mew. And if you can get all that, there's really no way to lose if you can get everything every turn, as long as you do your math correctly. And yeah, as long as you don't miss a deck and cover, if you get completely set up and your opponent doesn't play cards like Unknown Cure or Seeker, then it doesn't matter, you're going to win. So right off the bat, Yuta did not get a super fast start, but he did, he did end Esa, he got an energy, and he got an Eviolite on his Darkrai, which is very important. This causes Mew to only do 10 damage with deck and cover, which means it takes a ton more attacks in order to use deck and cover to eventually knock out Darkrai. So, your plan against this deck is to try to make it as difficult as possible for them to get anything going, and make it difficult for them to keep using deck and cover. I mean, every time you use it, they do have to shuffle Mew and the double colorless energy back into their deck. So, you just kind of make it difficult for them, make it so that they have to use it as many times as possible, and maybe they'll miss eventually. So right now, Esa gets a huge start, a turn 2 Vileplume. He has the Relicanth as well. There's really no chance of being Night Speared anytime in the coming turns. The fastest a Night Spear could come is turn 3 if Yuta is fortunate enough to get 2 Dark Energy and a Shaman in these next 2 turns. He can attach, retreat to the Smeargle, and then he can go ahead, Celebration Wind and Energy to his Darkrai, and then he can Night Spear. He's going to use Portrait. Esa does have that Sage's Training in his hand, so Yuta's going to grab that. Discards the 3 trainers immediately. Grabs a Dark Energy and an Oak's New Theory. So it looks really bad for Yuta at this point. If you just look at the situation, I mean, come on. Turn 2 Vileplume, and now the Lampent comes down. He's got the energy in the Lampent already. The only thing that Esa is missing is the Accelgor in the Lost Zone. He's going to play a Sage's Training to try to find that, but those are some 5 ugly cards, but that's okay. He has a little bit of time to work everything out. So if you're Yuta, all you can really do is attack and pray. You can Night Spear. Hopefully, Esa, if you're in Yuta's shoes, hopefully he just doesn't get the cards he needs quickly enough, and you can Night Spear the Vileplume enough times where eventually you'll be able to knock it out. Now, if you're Esa, this is a beautiful situation. You can't really ask for much more besides having the Accelgor in the Lost Zone, but I don't think you can complain at this point, considering you have a turn 2 Vileplume. You went first, you locked your opponent out of trainers from the get-go, and we're using Prehistoric Wisdom again. Didn't get the Accelgor in the Lost Zone, so he might be in a little bit of trouble depending on what happens here. And looks like Yuta will go ahead and Juniper away his hand. Once Vileplume comes out, you can't play any of those nice trainers like Pokemon Catcher, Junk Arm, and all that stuff. So he just realizes that, and he's just going to go ahead and discard those because they're worthless. But this is going to be the turn that he Night Spears. He gets the Portrait, he gets to Collector for the Shaman. So he's just going to retreat for free thanks to Darkrai EX's Dark Cloak. Promote his Darkrai with 2 energy. Shaman, Celebration Wind, the energy up to his Darkrai. Might as well bench another Darkrai. And here we go in the Night Spear. Now this is going to put pressure on Esa, but he has a few turns to get everything going. Once you get Chandelure out, you can really just control what happens with the game. You can control when your opponent gets knocked out. So what you usually try to do is have it so your opponent gets knocked out either by poison from deck and cover, or they get knocked out from Chandelure's Curse Shadow. Both ways allow you, or force your opponent to promote a new Pokemon, which then you paralyze once again with deck and cover. Now, most of the Pokemon in Yuta's deck happen to fall in a bad hit point range. For example, if he were to promote a Smeargle, deck and cover would do 50, the poison would do 10 more, he'd be paralyzed, and then his turn would end, and he would get knocked out from poison because it has 70 hit points. Same thing with Shaman. So he doesn't really have anything that he can just promote and try to waste time. And now, Yuta's got to be getting a little scared. There is an Accelgor in the Lost Zone, which means deck and cover is coming anytime soon. Now, for Esa, his goal has to be, alright, I need to thin out my deck. I need to try to play as many cards as possible so that I can keep drawing my double colorless energy every turn. This is one of the many obstacles with the Accelgor deck, but if you can get everything working correctly, it is by far the best deck in the format. There's no question about it. It just is unbeatable once everything gets going. You just lock your opponent out of the game, and there's not much they can do about it. So we can see he does have that Chandelure in his hand. Now we can see Esa's deck list is a little strange. It plays cards like N. We've seen players feature cards like Musharna in their deck so they can use Forewarn to kind of thin their deck out a little bit, get an extra card every turn so that they improve their shots at getting a double colorless every turn. I don't see that anywhere in his deck list. He also runs N, which is a card that you really don't see too often in this deck because, again, you are actually vulnerable to N as the game goes on. But he does have Twins, so he will be able to use deck and cover this turn. Probably search his deck for a double colorless and another Twins, but his hand really isn't that great. He'll be able to deck and cover a couple times here, and then we'll see what happens from there, but you really want to have this lock going repeatedly. You want to get the Mew and the double colorless every turn. You want to get your deck down to very few cards so you can keep pulling this off. So we'll see if he can manage to pull that off. Now, the fortunate part for him is that he only fell behind 2 prizes by the time that he got everything set up. Usually you can fall behind 3, 4, even 5 prizes with this deck before you get your desired setup. But here he's only fallen behind 2, and he has a little wiggle room. You know, he has some time to just say, okay, if I miss a turn of deck and cover, I'm not in the worst position in the world. I can still pull this out. One of the bad things that could happen is that he loses access to Twins once he knocks out this first Darkrai. And then later on in the game, he could be vulnerable to N, shuffling in his hand, going down to a low number of hit points, or no, a low number of cards, sorry. And he might just whiff the deck and cover a couple times and end up losing, because if you do miss a couple times against Darkrai, the Night Spear damage is so devastating. As you can see, there's already 60 on the Vileplume. 2 more Night Spears and it is gone. And Yuta has access to trainers all over again. He could play Catcher, Switch, Junk Arm, blah blah blah. Everything to just help him win. Now so far, Esa has done fine. He has gotten the deck and cover every turn. And for Yuta, you're like, this is what I'm afraid of. How do I beat this? This is a silly deck. How does this even exist? But it does exist, so he has to find a way to deal with it. He's going to do everything he can, but in his situation, you really don't have many options besides sit there and cross your fingers. I don't know how else to put it. Now, the way that Curse Shadow and Deck and Cover do damage against an Evilated Darkrai, it works beautifully. He has been putting 3 damage counters on that Darkrai with Curse Shadow every turn. And with Deck and Cover, it'll actually end up where coming back into Esa's turn, if he can Deck and Cover again this turn, that Darkrai EX will be knocked out by poison damage. Because you can see there's 120 damage on the Darkrai right now. It'll take 30 from Curse Shadow, 10 from Deck and Cover, 10 from poison, and that's 50 damage. And then coming back, it'll take the additional 10 damage from poison. It'll get knocked out, and Yuta will have to promote a new Pokemon to get decked in the face. Alright, so Esa, he plays an N this turn, which was actually a questionable decision. He had a Collector in his hand. Now, I can see what he's doing. He's going for the Mew and the double colorless. He's thinking, oh no, I need to get Deck and Cover every turn, every turn, every turn. But in this situation, I think he actually had a little bit of time to just kind of sit back and say, okay, I can take one more Night Spear. That's fine. But what he did was shuffle his hand into his deck, didn't really thin many cards out, and now he doesn't even have an energy to attach. He doesn't have a way to Deck and Cover next turn, and it really just took away a lot of his options. I think he would have been better off just playing the Collector last turn, grabbing like 3 basics, benching a couple Mews. You know, you don't get the Paralysis Lock, but you're still only down 2 prizes. You'll be down 3 at that point, but you have a good position still. But in this spot, he's going to be in a bit of trouble. He's going to have to retreat to something, sacrifice it. I don't know what he's going to sacrifice. Looks like an Oddish. This is dangerous as well. And now at this point, he is under a ton of pressure. He cannot afford to miss any more Deck and Covers because Yuta will Night Spear and do 30 to the Vileplume this turn. He just will. That's what's going to happen. And then there's only going to be 30 HP left on the Vileplume, which means one more Night Spear, the Vileplume is gone, Esa doesn't have any more Oddish in play. He's going to lose. You know, Yuta will have access to trainers, and there's nothing Esa will be able to do about it. The lock will be broken, and all of a sudden Yuta will be in control. So he's going to retreat just to make sure he doesn't get knocked out from poison, and then go ahead and Night Spear the active Oddish, knocking out that Vileplume. And Esa, okay, he does draw the double colorless energy, which is a big deal. We'll see what he decides to do, though. He could go ahead and just knock out that bench Darkrai. That's one option he has. What that does, though, is make his ends less powerful. It makes it so he only gets to draw 4. It also make Yuta's ends more powerful. So I think he should probably just put the damage on the active with Curse Shadow. That Darkrai on the bench is always going to be there. You don't need to worry about knocking that out. And Yuta's bench is full. So usually you want to avoid taking prizes for as long as possible, just so you have cards like Twins and N at your disposal, and they won't end up hurting you by, you know, you drawing them and you don't have any options for them. They just become weaker cards after you take more prizes. And so he's going to Collector, and we'll see. It looks like he doesn't have any N left in his deck, though. So maybe there won't be any downside to knocking out that bench Darkrai besides Yuta playing an N. That could be a big problem. So right here, he's going to grab a Mew, a Shaman, and an Oddish. That's fine. He'll bench another Mew. That's good. He really needs to do that. You know, at this point, the name of the game is going to be N. And will I draw double colorless energy? And let's see. He's going to Curse Shadow, put 2 damage counters on that bench Darkrai, and knock that out. Now again, I question that decision just because of N. I don't know how many Yuta has played to this point, but it's going to come up. It's going to be a factor. And, you know, all of a sudden I don't mind Yuta's position that much. I mean, if Esa does hit Deck and Cover every single turn, yeah, he's going to win. There's no way around that. But it's not too likely that he does that. He's got a lot of cards left in his deck, a lot of dead cards left in his deck that he can't even play. So he's going to draw into them from N. And there's not much you can do about it. Now that is a nice Sage's Training. He gets 2 double colorless off of that, discards 3 junk cards that he doesn't want to draw anymore. And right now, as long as he does his math correctly, he'll be in a good position. So he's got to make sure with Chandelure's Curse Shadow that he doesn't mess up and put too much damage on a Darkrai so that he can't, or that the poison damage doesn't work out. The worst thing he can have happen is attack and knock out the active, allowing Yuta to promote something new, and then Night Spear his Vileplume. He cannot allow that to happen. He needs to do the maths to say, okay, if I poison him every turn with Deck and Cover, when does he get knocked out? Does he get knocked out going into his turn or coming back into my turn? And if he gets knocked out going into his turn, I've made a mistake. That's all that comes down to. So we will see a Deck and Cover one more time. And yeah, he actually did mess up the math there, unfortunately. If he would have put 10 damage somewhere else, it would have been fine. But the way it is now, look, he's going to have, let's see, 140 damage after this turn. He's going to Deck and Cover for 30, and then 10 more from Poison. And now, all of a sudden, Yuta is going to be in a tremendous position. He can knock out the Vileplume after this active Darkrai gets knocked out. He used Shaman to Celebration Wind, move all his energy away from the active before it gets knocked out. He Junipers away that Tropical Tidal Wave, oh no. And yeah, I mean, to put it bluntly, Esa just didn't do the math correctly. If he puts 10 damage somewhere else, just 10 damage, that's all it takes, he'll probably win the game. But the way it is now, he can't Deck and Cover anymore. He will knock out that Darkrai. And even if he uses Curse Shadow, puts 3 on the active, it'll get knocked out by Poison. His Vileplume just gets knocked out. So, a really big blunder there, I have to say. Maybe it's just his inexperience with the deck. Maybe it's just getting late, and he didn't factor in some poison damage or something. Did a little math incorrectly. But this deck is all about finesse. It's all about manipulating when your opponent gets knocked out. And unfortunately, he just made a little blunder here. And that might end up costing him the game. Now, he still could win this game. I'm not counting him out just yet, but he's going to be at a tremendous disadvantage once his Vileplume gets knocked out. There is no doubt about that. Once Yuta can play catcher, it's really going to be over. I'm sure he has a few catchers and junk arms left in his deck. And once he can do that, and he also has N in his hand, so after he does that, I mean, I don't know what Esa's plan is. He could try to get another Vileplume out, but it looks like he didn't pull that off. He didn't even bench the Oddish. I wonder if he has any rare candies or Vileplumes left in his deck. Maybe he discarded some with Sage. He does have a Pokemon catcher. I don't know how useful that'll be, but he has that. So he can bench the Oddish, but he really doesn't even have the resources to take advantage of that. I mean, if he takes the knockout here, he definitely won't be able to use Twins. And yeah, I really don't know what his goal is at this point. He's going to put a Rainbow Energy on the Chandelure. Maybe give himself an option to use Eerie Glow. I think that's the name of the attack. This 50 Confuse and Burn. I don't think that'll do too much, considering Yuta has a fully powered Darkrai. Chandelure is weak to Dark. And a Mewtwo with 3 double Colorless on them, which means an X-Ball for a lot of damage. So this turn, I don't think Esa has much of a choice other than, oh, okay, he's going to put 30 on the active Darkrai. I actually do not like that play very much at all. You want to make sure that you knock him out on your turn, because now Yuta can just play N, and I think Esa just loses. He made the right move by promoting the Vileplume. He realizes, okay, it's getting knocked out by Night Spear no matter what I do. But right now, if Yuta has an N and plays it, Esa's at 2 cards. There's no 2 cards he can even draw to give him a shot at this game. Maybe he can draw another Oak's New Theory. That's probably his only hope, but he's played a couple of those already. N is no longer an option, Twins is no longer an option, and he's basically going to lose in 2 turns because it's going to be a Night Spear, knock out the active, 30 on the Oddish. Next turn, if Yuta has a catcher or a junk arm for a catcher, he just catches out the Chandelure, knocks out the Chandelure and the Oddish, and the game's over. Not much that he can do at this point. Again, it's just a little bit of, I don't know, just incorrect strategy going ahead and taking the knockout on your turn. You would want to just put like 2 damage counters on the active Darkrai and then 1 somewhere else. That way you can Curse Shadow it later, or if he doesn't have the energy to retreat it, then it gets knocked out going back into your turn, and it's beautiful. But the way it is now, he just got N down to 2 cards, and is pretty much going to be over. I wish there were a way out for him, but I don't really see any way that's possible. Maybe if he draws his 1 catcher, that could be an option. Now, he does have a Mew and an N, so these are probably the 2 best cards he could have drawn. He can bench the Mew, play the N, and go for it. I don't think he has any other choice. Let's see, what does he have in his hand? Looks like a Sage. So he could go for the Sage and deck and cover. And let's see if he gets anything. Looks like no double colorless. Wow. That was actually pretty unfortunate to not draw that. But I don't know if you'd even have a follow-up for next turn after that. We'll see what he decides to do with this. He could really just like play all of his resources out and go ahead and say, alright, I'm going to grab Communication and one of the Pokemon. And then, let's see, I can grab a Shaman, move both my energy to a Mew, deck and cover, and I can paralyze him for a turn. But after that, it's pretty much going to be over. There's really nothing for him to do after that. He doesn't have any free retreating Pokemon to even promote. And yeah, that's just unfortunate. A bad couple cards there. If he had a Gloom, he could maybe survive a turn. If he's going to Communication, let's see if there's a Gloom in his deck. Doesn't look like it. So he's going to grab Shaman. Looks like he will deck and cover this turn, I suppose, but this is only going to be a 1-turn paralysis lock. He has to promote a new Pokemon. And when he does that, it won't have free retreat. He's going to miss the paralysis next turn. But he's going to do it anyway. He's going to go out with a bang, move all his stuff there, deck and cover, and yeah. Now, he actually could have pulled off a really fluky win, believe it or not, if he got a Mew and then 2 energy on the Mew and a catcher. Actually, no. I'm thinking of Mew EX. I'm getting way too far ahead of myself. I was thinking he could have X-balled that Mewtwo. But no, that was not an option. Sorry. A catcher could have stalled him some time, maybe, if Yuta didn't have an energy. Yeah, maybe a catcher on a Mewtwo would have worked with the Curse Shadow damage and deck and cover. Mewtwo is weak to Psychic. That would have actually worked out perfectly if Yuta didn't have a catcher. So the Pokemon catcher for Esa could have done wonders, but it didn't. Now he's just going to end and cross his fingers. Hopefully Yuta doesn't have a catcher. If he does, it's game over. And it's, yep, there's a Junk Arm. So he's just going to go ahead, Junk Arm for the Pokemon catcher, the Golden Catcher. Bring out the Chandelure, knock out the Chandelure and the Oddish, and take it again. Oh, there were 2 Mews prized for Esa. That's a little bit of bad luck. He still had a good shot at winning the game, but that is certainly some bad luck with those prizes. So that's going to wrap up round 1 from Top Gun Invitational. Hope you enjoyed this matchup between Esa Juntunen and Yuta Komatsuda. Yuta will win this matchup. He will be 1-0 in this tournament. And it was an exciting game. I can show you that even when your opponent's fully set up doesn't mean the game's over. So thanks for watching, guys. We got more world-class action coming up from the Top Gun Invitational soon. Esa will go to 0-1. He will actually face Jason Kozinski in the next round. And Yuta will be 1-0, and he will face... well, I don't want to spoil that for you yet. So, stay tuned for the next videos we'll have coming up, guys. Thanks for watching. I've been Pooka, and we'll be back with more action from the Top Gun Invitational.